Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Have you ever been in a situation where someone carefully lays a trap for you, weaving a web of deceit for weeks, just to make you ruin your own relationship? If you haven't, consider yourself lucky. Why am I saying this? Because I've been there, and I think it might destroy my relationship. My name is Rose, I'm 26, and I've got a story that might make you think twice before casually mocking someone. I'm here to rant, but I'd also love to hear any advice you might have. I've been in a serious relationship with my boyfriend, Jack, who's also 26, for 5 years now. We met on Tinder, realized we went to the same college, and instantly clicked. I truly believe Jack was the person I'd marry and spend the rest of my life with. Jack has always been a great guy, kind, caring, and constantly looking out for me. But one day, in a moment of playful teasing, I made a harmless jab at him, calling him weak. I never imagined that one comment would trigger a chain of revenge and deception that could unravel everything we'd built. Now, you're probably wondering why I mocked him in the first place. Honestly, it was meant as a light-hearted joke. Jack has always been the type to go out of his way to make me happy, which had earned him a reputation among our friends as being a bit of a softie. Even our friends would playfully tease me, calling him a pushover. Jack never seemed to mind. He'd laugh it off and even join in on the jokes. I guess, in some ways, I started to take his love and devotion for granted. Jack was like a rock in my life, always there to support me and always putting my needs before his own. It's easy to get comfortable in a relationship, isn't it? You begin to believe things will always stay the same, that your partner will always be by your side no matter what. The day everything changed started out just like any other. Jack and I were chatting, joking around about something or someone. I honestly don't even remember the details. In the middle of our banter, I playfully teased him, saying he should watch his back because I might leave him for someone else. It was meant to be a light-hearted remark, just another playful jab in the midst of our laughter. Jack chuckled and said I'd never leave him. In response, I playfully pushed further, saying I just might, adding that he was weak and a bit of a softie, so he'd better keep an eye on me. I thought it was all in good fun, just jokes between us. But Jack's reaction surprised me. Instead of laughing it off like he usually would, he fell silent. The air shifted, and I could feel a subtle tension building. My words had struck a nerve, awakening something in him that I hadn't noticed before. Looking back now, I realize how hurtful my comment must have been. Jack had always gone above and beyond to make me happy, showing me love in ways both big and small. Calling him weak and a softie, even as a joke, dismissed all of that. It was a wake-up call for both of us. I hadn't understood the weight my words carried or the impact they could have on our relationship. What I didn't know was that this seemingly innocent banter would set off a chain of events that would change everything between us. After that conversation, things started to feel off. Jack wasn't as protective or attentive as he used to be, a big shift from the way he had always been. He used to have my back in every situation, sometimes even to the point of being overbearing. He'd check in about my day, make sure I got home safely if he wasn't around, and always paid attention to the little things. But after that day, something changed. He stopped checking in as often, his texts became fewer, and our calls grew more sporadic. It felt like he was pulling away, leaving a gap between us that hadn't been there before. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just work stress or something temporary. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I started missing the way he used to hold me close in crowds, always making sure I felt safe. It was like Jack had lost that protective instinct, and without it, I felt exposed, like a safety net had been pulled away. I couldn't help but wonder if my teasing had driven him away, if my words had somehow caused this shift in our relationship dynamic. I noticed that things had indeed changed between us, but I didn't know how to bridge the growing gap, or if it was even possible anymore. Jack and I lived together, and our routine had always worked well. He handled most of the household chores, even though he earned significantly more than me. He genuinely enjoyed cooking, cleaning, and doing the dishes, especially since he knew how much I disliked those tasks. It was something I had come to rely on, and it felt like his way of showing love. But after that playful conversation, his behavior at home shifted noticeably. He stopped taking the initiative to do the chores he used to enjoy. Cooking became less frequent, cleaning wasn't as thorough, and the dishes began piling up in the sink. At first, I brushed it off, thinking he was busy or preoccupied with work. But as the days turned into weeks, it became clear that something was different. Jack seemed less invested in our home life, as though he'd pulled back from the small acts of care that used to bring us closer. I tried to pick up the slack, but it wasn't the same. I missed the way he'd surprise me with a delicious dinner or clean the apartment just to make me smile. It felt like part of our connection had faded, leaving a void, not just in our shared responsibilities, but in our relationship as a whole. I'll admit, at first, I felt a strange sense of relief when Jack became less overbearing. He wasn't fussing over every detail of my whereabouts, and it felt liberating to go out with my friends without constantly updating him or worrying about his reactions. At first, I embraced the newfound freedom. I could plan spontaneous weekend getaways or spend the night with friends without feeling suffocated by messages or calls from Jack. It felt like a breath of fresh air to have that space and independence. I could focus more on myself, pursue hobbies, and reconnect with friends without the guilt or obligation of constantly checking in. It was as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I appreciated this new dynamic in our relationship. However, as time went on, I began to realize that this freedom came at a cost. The lack of communication and engagement from Jack started to feel like indifference. I missed the times he'd show concern or take an interest in my plans. What once felt liberating, the absence of his messages or calls, now left a void in our connection. I started to question whether this shift in our dynamic was healthy for our relationship. While I enjoyed the independence, I also longed for the closeness and intimacy that had once defined our bond. Jack's behavior continued to change, and I noticed the absence of the little gestures that used to mean so much. For example, he stopped opening the car door for me, something he had always done without fail. It may seem minor, but those small acts of chivalry symbolized his care and attention. There was also a noticeable shift in his attitude toward finances. Jack earned significantly more than I did, and had always taken care of our financial needs without hesitation. If I needed money for shopping or other expenses, he'd provide it without complaint. It was a comfortable arrangement that worked well for us. But after that pivotal moment in our relationship, his generosity waned. He became more cautious with his spending, and I found myself needing to ask for financial support, something I had never had to do before. This created a sense of unease and dependency that I wasn't used to. It felt as though I had lost not just his emotional support, but also the financial stability he once provided. The absence of those small but meaningful gestures, combined with the change in his financial support, deepened the growing distance between us. As this distance grew, I found myself seeking validation and attention elsewhere. What started as innocent conversations and harmless flirting in social settings or online soon became a temporary distraction from the emptiness I felt in my relationship with Jack. Over time, I found myself seeking these interactions more frequently. The attention and compliments I received from others seemed to fill a void that was growing deeper within me. It felt like I was craving that sense of being desired and appreciated, something I felt was missing in my relationship with Jack. You might wonder why I didn't just talk to Jack about how I was feeling. The truth is, I tried. But whenever I brought up my concerns, Jack would brush them off or even gaslight me into thinking I was overthinking or projecting my insecurities onto our relationship. He invalidated my feelings, made me doubt myself, and left me questioning whether I was being irrational. This only made things worse. I felt unheard and misunderstood, which pushed me even further towards seeking validation outside of our relationship. As more time passed, the distance between Jack and me only seemed to grow, despite my attempts to repair our relationship. No matter how hard I tried to communicate or reconnect, it felt like I was hitting an impenetrable wall. The frustration and loneliness I experienced reached a breaking point. Eventually, this led to a moment of weakness where my harmless flirting crossed a line. It became full-on cheating. It was a mistake I deeply regretted, and I knew it was wrong. It happened only once, but the guilt still weighs heavily on me. What made matters worse was that I couldn't bring myself to confess to Jack. I was ashamed and terrified of his reaction. I knew the truth would devastate him, and I couldn't bear to see the pain it would cause, so I hid it. The full weight of how far Jack and I had drifted apart hit me when I found out about his major promotion and the new house he'd purchased, without telling me. The way I learned about it made the realization even more painful. I still remember the shock and humiliation I felt when mutual friends casually mentioned Jack's promotion and his new house during a conversation. I was blindsided, not just by the news itself, but by the fact that Jack hadn't thought it important to share these significant milestones with me, his partner. What made it sting even more was that we had always talked about buying a house together. It was a shared dream, something we had envisioned as a couple. To discover that Jack had gone ahead and made such a life-altering decision on his own felt like a betrayal of our shared aspirations. I decided to confront Jack, hoping it could be a turning point, a chance for us to address the growing distance and work toward a solution. But that confrontation only shattered any remaining illusions I had about our relationship. I realized then how much he had been pushing me away, gaslighting me and making me doubt my own feelings and perceptions. What was meant to be a moment of clarity instead confirmed just how broken things had become between us. However, I'm sure you've already guessed that the confrontation didn't go as I had hoped. Jack's response was unexpected and deeply hurtful. He accused me of disrespecting and insulting him and used that as justification for his changed behavior. He argued that he had always been the one making the effort in our relationship and that he saw no point in continuing to try when his efforts were unappreciated. What hurt the most was when Jack revealed that he knew about my infidelity. It was like a dagger to my heart, realizing that he had found out about my mistake and had been silently holding it against me. His anger was palpable, and after expressing his frustrations, he stormed off, leaving me feeling utterly broken. Now I feel like I'm at a crossroads. It feels as though I'm losing, or have already lost, the relationship that once meant everything to me. Yes, I made a mistake, but it was born out of feeling neglected and unappreciated. Jack may have fallen short in some ways, but he was a good partner, and I never wanted him to stop caring or making an effort for us. So here I am, reaching out to Reddit for advice. What should I do? Is there any way to salvage what's left of our relationship? Is it possible to get Jack to forgive me? I just want my old Jack back. A lot of my friends suggested couples therapy and individual therapy, and I appreciate those thoughtful recommendations. It's something I've been seriously considering as I realize the need to work on myself and our relationship. Regarding the issue of financial dependence, I fully acknowledge that relying entirely on Jack was not the wisest decision. I work in a field that doesn't pay well, and since Jack was more financially stable, he took on more of the responsibilities. Over time, it became a pattern I grew accustomed to. However, I realize now that I should have been more proactive in being financially responsible and independent. Jack has always been more financially savvy, and because he was the man in our relationship, I often left those things to him. Some say that cheating is a deal breaker, and while I understand that perspective, I also believe every relationship is unique. Cheating was a terrible mistake on my part, and I deeply regret it. However, I also believe in forgiveness and second chances, especially when genuine love and commitment are involved. I truly believe Jack will forgive me. We've been together for a long time, and I hope he understands that my infidelity was a mistake, not a reflection of how much I care about him. I know it won't be easy for him to move past it, but I have faith that he will, in time. Ultimately, I'm here because I want advice and guidance. I want to know how to rebuild trust and salvage what's left of our relationship. I know Jack's forgiveness won't come easily, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends and work toward a better future together. It's disheartening to see how quickly some people on social media judge me based on a few posts. Many have called me narcissistic, unfeeling, or entitled without truly understanding me or my story. They act as if they've got everything figured out, assuming that Jack will leave me and that I'll see things differently when he does. But relationships are far more complex than that. You can't fully grasp someone's life from a few online updates. I've reached out to Jack, and he told me he's on his way home. We're probably going to have an important conversation. Jack returned home, and we finally had a much-needed conversation. I suggested couples therapy as a way to work through our issues, but Jack seemed more inclined toward breaking up. I had to plead with him to reconsider and give therapy a chance before making any final decisions. We eventually agreed that if therapy didn't help, we would then discuss separating. Despite everything, I still love Jack and want to salvage our relationship, so I'm cautiously optimistic. Additionally, on a practical level, I rely on him for a lot of things. We found a therapist with excellent reviews and booked our first session. Our first therapy session was a bit rocky. Jack had been keeping to himself a lot, and despite my efforts to engage him with special nights out or deep conversations, he remained distant and reserved. During this time, we even had an argument about money. I had asked him for some financial help, which he declined. In the first session, we discussed several challenges in our relationship. I brought up Jack's reluctance to share money and his emotional distance. I also mentioned how sensitive he seemed about a playful comment I had made. The therapist, however, emphasized that Jack's feelings were valid and that it was okay for him to express emotions like anyone else. I'll continue to share updates as things progress. After a few more therapy sessions, it became clear that things weren't improving as we had hoped. Jack opened up and shared his thoughts, revealing that he had deeply reflected on our relationship but couldn't bring himself to forgive me. He explained how hurt he felt, especially considering that he had always been the one putting significant effort into our relationship, shouldering responsibilities, and trying to make me happy. Jack also mentioned how much it hurt him when I mocked him as weak and called him a S. He admitted that my words struck a chord and left a lasting impact. Additionally, He confessed that in his pain, he had deliberately tried to gaslight me at times, which he now regrets. During our final session, Jack came clean. He wanted to break up. He shared that he had been working on the house he bought, and now that it was ready, he planned to move in there. Hearing this news left me feeling panicked and overwhelmed. I relied heavily on Jack, both financially and emotionally, and without his support, I knew I wouldn't be able to afford the lease on my own. The rent was simply too high. Moving back in with my parents wasn't an option either, as their house was already overcrowded with my siblings and their families. I also didn't have any friends who could take me in. Feeling desperate, I pleaded with Jack to reconsider and give our relationship another chance through therapy. Deep down, I knew that losing him would drastically change my life, and I wasn't sure how I'd navigate everything without his presence and support. The reality was clear. I was broke, and without Jack, I would undoubtedly struggle. Despite my heartfelt pleas and begging, Jack remained resolute in his decision to end things. While he expressed regret, he explained that he needed to move forward with his life without me. In the days that followed, he came over to pack his belongings. I tried everything to stop him, from emotional appeals to physically trying to restrain him, but my actions only seemed to anger him further. To make matters worse, I had already spent my last paycheck, leaving me in a financial bind until the next month. With desperation creeping in, I turned to our mutual friends for help, hoping for some support during this difficult time. I told our mutual friends that Jack was leaving me but didn't disclose the full truth about my infidelity, knowing they would likely blame me if they knew. I asked them to talk to Jack, hoping they could convince him to reconsider. However, instead of mediating, our friends bombarded Jack with calls and messages, pushing him to the point where he revealed the truth about my cheating. That revelation must have completely changed their perception of the situation because they turned against me. They criticized me for not being honest with them, calling it deceitful and saying it was disgusting that I intentionally omitted such an important detail. The betrayal I felt from Jack leaving and from our friends' reaction was overwhelming. Desperate and running out of options, I turned to our parents for help. I begged my parents to intervene by speaking to Jack and trying to convince him to reconsider, or at the very least, provide me with some financial support to help cover rent and bills until I could figure things out. I also reached out to Jack's parents, hoping they might understand my situation and help mediate. Unfortunately, things didn't go as I'd hoped. I'm not sure what Jack told them, but both sets of parents sided with him completely. They expressed their disappointment in me, echoing the sentiment that I was to blame for everything. It was incredibly disheartening to see them align with Jack and offer no support or understanding. Feeling like I had exhausted every avenue, I reached out to Jack directly, hoping for some compassion or a chance to explain myself. Instead, he accused me of trying to ruin his reputation and told me that any sympathy he had left for me was gone. Feeling desperate, I even went to Jack's workplace to try and talk to him, but he threatened to get a restraining order. It's hard to believe that after everything we've been through, he's serious about ending things completely now. I'm stuck. My friends and family have turned against me. Jack refuses to help, and I'm lost about what to do next. Everything feels uncertain, and I'm struggling to figure out what comes next. Any advice would be really appreciated. Things have been incredibly tough, and the negative comments and messages I've been getting have really started to affect me. People are calling me crazy and delusional, saying I'm stuck in my head. Many even expressed more sympathy for Jack than for me, and said they would have filed a restraining order if they were in his shoes. Honestly, I was hoping for some understanding or support, but it's clear that's not coming. It feels like everyone has turned their backs on me, and I'm in a really difficult position. Next month's rent is a huge concern. I might not be able to afford it given how expensive everything is here, especially with the housing crisis. Finding a roommate has been tough, and if I can't find someone to share expenses with, I might not be able to stay here. So far, no luck. 3 months later, I can't believe how quickly things have moved for Jack. It's almost like he's turned a new page in his life while I'm still stuck, barely holding on to the last remnants of what I had. He's found someone new, and from what I can see on social media, it's like everything is falling into place for him. Her name is Sarah, and they've been dating for a few months now. They look so happy together, posting pictures of their weekend getaways and cozy nights in. It stings in ways I didn't expect. He's already talking about getting married, and I can't help but feel like the universe is mocking me. I'm still here, alone, trying to figure out how to survive each day. My finances are a mess, and I can't seem to find a way out of the hole I've dug myself into. I've spent hours searching for a job, trying to find someone who can share my rent, but nothing is working out. The bills pile up faster than I can pay them, and I feel like I'm drowning in them. Every time I check my bank account, The numbers remind me of how far I've fallen. It's as if the life I once had with Jack, the stability, the future we talked about, is slipping further and further away. Mentally, I'm a wreck. I keep telling myself that things will get better, that somehow, I'll pull through. But it's hard to hold on to hope when everything feels like it's falling apart. The weight of the guilt from everything I've done haunts me, and I can't seem to shake it. Every time I see Jack's updates, I feel like I'm being crushed all over again. I see him moving on, finding happiness, and I wonder if I'll ever get to that point. Will I ever find someone who looks at me the way he did? Will I ever feel whole again? He's so close to starting this new life with someone else, and here I am, barely keeping myself together. It's like I'm stuck in a loop, unable to escape the mistakes of my past, and no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to break free from it. I thought I could rebuild, but now it feels like everything is out of my control. I'm lost, and Jack is out there living the life we had dreamed of, with someone else. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.